Zayden Hale had barely stepped off the shuttle before disaster struck. The air on Kirell 4 was thin and chalky with a faint metallic tang that clung to the tongue. 100 meters below the shuttle's landing platform, wind howled through staggered ravines carved by centuries of planetary erosion. The welcome ceremony was meant to happen at the cliffside observatory, a massive cantilevered structure jutting over one of these gorges like a glass blade. The Kirellian ambassador, a barrel-shaped creature named Verney with translucent skin and twitching eye stalks, had just extended a ceremonial orb toward Zayden when the platform shuddered under them. A low groan echoed from the structural supports. Verney froze. "Do not move," he said. Zayden was already moving. Not out of panic, but because the orb had slipped from Verney's grasp. It bounced once and rolled toward the edge. Without thinking, Zayden lunged after it. A sharp crack. The edge crumbled under his boots. Then nothing but air. He fell. The drop was steep and long and littered with jagged rock outcroppings. Verney's eye stalks recoiled in horror. Dozens of Kirellians looked away at once, unable to process what they'd just seen. The fall lasted 4 seconds. Zayden hit a sloped ledge, bounced, struck another surface, then tumbled through a scrub of alien thistle brush before disappearing into a shadowed crevice. Is he gone?" one of the junior aides whispered. Verney didn't answer. He turned and activated his communicator. "Immediate dispatch. Medical. Retrieval team. Sector Delta 7. 1 human. Severe fall." By the time the HoverMed unit arrived, several Kirellians had descended via tether lines, expecting to retrieve a corpse. What they found instead was Zayden sprawled across a shelf of rock, unconscious but breathing. And bleeding. A lot. His right leg bent at a wrong angle and his left arm was twisted under him. His face was smeared with blood from a deep scalp wound. But he was alive. The medic stabilized him, hoisted his body into a suspension cradle, and floated him back toward the shuttle where a makeshift triage bay had been set up. The Kirellians gathered in hushed awe, whispering among themselves. "He should be dead. No organic entity can survive a drop that distance. Did he activate a personal shield? Negative. No shield signature detected." Zayden regained consciousness during the flight back to the orbital station. Groggy, in pain, and strapped into a medical harness. He opened his eyes and croaked, "Water!" A Kirellian nurse offered him a hydration tube. He blinked at her, then winced. "That orb." "Did I catch it?" "You did not." "Damn." By the time they reached the station's medical bay, Zayden's vitals were stabilizing. The chief xenomedical officer, a smooth-skinned, three-eyed physician named Dranex, ran a full diagnostic using a hybrid scanner calibrated for human anatomy. 2 fractured ribs, Dranex said, examining the readout. "Fractured ulna. Compound break in the right femur. Mild cranial trauma. Pulmonary bruising. You're extremely fortunate." Zayden lifted his head slightly. "I feel like I got punted off a skyscraper." "You essentially were." The treatment began immediately. His leg was immobilized with a rigid biosplint, his arm set and wrapped, and his head wound closed with dermal mesh. Painkillers entered his bloodstream through a drip, and he slipped in and out of consciousness for the next few hours. The Kirellians watched him with a mixture of morbid curiosity and disbelief. By their standards, a fall from that height was terminal. The idea of someone surviving it, much less remaining conscious afterward, bordered on myth. Dranex returned later with a second scan. "There's no spinal damage. Your internal organs are intact. The breaks are clean. You'll need surgery for the femur. Our team's prepping for the procedure now." Zayden nodded weakly. "Do it." While the surgical team worked, Ambassador Verney paced outside the observation window. His senior aide, Lurik, stood beside him, shifting nervously. "He should not be alive," Verney said. "No, Ambassador. And yet he is." The surgery took over 4 hours. The Kirellian medical team, trained in multi-species procedures, adapted quickly to human physiology. They installed a titanium rod in Zayden's femur, reinforced the arm with a flexible support lattice, and left the ribs to heal naturally, monitored by micro-implants. When Zayden awoke, groggy but lucid, Draenix stood at the foot of his bed. Surgery was successful. You'll need at least 6 weeks before weight-bearing activity. Zayden raised an eyebrow. I was supposed to give a speech today. You're lucky you can still speak. For the next several days, Zayden remained under observation. The Kirellians visited him in shifts, some bringing gifts, strange glowing stones, fragrant water orbs, synthesized music crystals. He accepted each with a tired smile. One afternoon, Vruni entered quietly, pausing at the foot of the bed. I have never seen such a thing, he said. Zayden leaned back against the incline of his cot. Not exactly how I wanted to make first impressions. You fell over 200 meters, struck multiple surfaces, and survived. Yeah, that should have killed you. Probably. You are not augmented. No, you did not prepare for such a situation. Definitely not. Vruni hesitated. Then how? Zayden closed his eyes for a moment. I don't know. Maybe I hit just right. Maybe I got lucky. Maybe humans are just stubborn like that. Vruni stared at him. You are not wearing a bioshield. No grav stabilizer. You caught nothing to slow your fall. Nope. Draenix entered behind Vruni. Ambassador, you should let him rest. Yes, of course. Vruni turned to leave, then paused. Zayden Hale, your resilience is extraordinary. He left without another word. The next few weeks were slow. Zayden couldn't walk without assistance, and even then only short distances. His physical therapy began with basic mobility, flexing and extending his leg, gripping objects with his injured hand. The Kirellian therapists were fascinated by his progress. Human musculature responds rapidly, one noted. Despite severe trauma. Not rapidly, Zayden muttered. Just determined. They studied his X-rays, monitoring the healing bone tissue, the integration of the support rod, the alignment of his ulna. Day by day, he improved. He still winced when breathing deeply, but the bruising in his lungs faded. His scalp wound left a scar, but nothing more. By the end of the 4th week, he could walk short distances with a cane. Draenix watched him closely. You are recovering faster than expected. I drink a lot of milk. I do not believe dairy is the reason. Zayden chuckled, then winced. Still hurts to laugh. A week later, he climbed a flight of stairs. The Kirellians gathered again, this time not in mourning but in amazement. They watched him ascend slowly, gripping the handrail, sweat beading on his forehead. When he reached the top, he turned and waved. The crowd murmured. Vruni approached him afterward. You understand many of our people are struggling to process this. Zayden nodded. I get it. Your survival contradicts everything we understand about biological limits. I didn't mean to break your science. You did not break it. You expanded it. He was invited to speak once he could stand without leaning on the cane. The observatory had been repaired, reinforced with stronger materials. Zayden returned there, limping slightly. The orb he tried to catch was now encased in crystal at the center of the platform. He looked out over the ravine. The ledges he'd bounced off were still visible far below. Then he turned to the assembled Kirellians. I don't have a grand explanation, he said. I fell. I got hurt. I didn't die. I got lucky. And I had good doctors. There was a long silence. Then Vruni stepped forward. Perhaps luck is the most remarkable force of all. Zayden smiled. Maybe. He never tried to explain it further. Because honestly, he didn't know how he was still alive either. The day Zayden Hale walked without the cane, he did it in front of the wrong audience. A group of Kirellian engineers had gathered in the station's arboretum to test an atmospheric stabilization prototype. They stood in a semicircle, adjusting dials on a control panel shaped like a woven basket, when Zayden wandered in, dragging a chair behind him like it owed him money. He didn't notice the engineers until he was halfway across the room. Yeah, sorry, he said, setting the chair down with a grunt. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just wanted to sit somewhere that doesn't smell like sterilized gauze and boiled algae. The Kirellians turned slowly, their multi-hinged heads swiveling in perfect synchrony. One of them, a thin-limbed technician with a lattice of sensor nodes embedded in his torso, stepped forward. "You are unsupported," he said. "Technically, yes. You are not using the mobility device." "Nope. You were not cleared for unassisted ambulation." I got bored. There was a long pause. The technician blinked both sets of eyelids. "You are in defiance of medical protocol." "Yeah, but I'm standing. So now we're both uncomfortable." He lowered himself into the chair with a hiss of effort and stretched his leg out gingerly. His knee still felt like it had been replaced with a rusted hinge, but it held. The technician turned to the others and muttered something in Kirellian, a static, heavy language full of clicks and pulses. There was a brief exchange. 3 of them began scanning Zayden from different angles, triangulating his vitals with overlapping beams of soft light. Zayden didn't flinch. He just leaned back and looked at the artificial trees swaying under the controlled breeze. "Are you in pain?" the technician asked. "Only when I exist." "Do you require sedation?" "Not unless you're offering something recreational." The technician made a note. Probably not a compliment. Another engineer approached. This one had a cranial crest that pulsed in response to emotional stimuli, currently flickering a cautious beige. He held out a small display unit. "This is the fall map." Zayden glanced at it. The diagram showed a 3-dimensional rendering of the ravine, annotated with trajectory vectors, impact points, and rotational data. "We recalculated your descent using kinetic modeling," the engineer said. "We've run it through 72 predictive simulations. In all but one, the subject, me, expired on contact." "Cool. You are not curious how you survived?" "I'm more curious why I'm still hungry after breakfast." "But go on." The engineer hesitated, then tapped the display. "You rotated mid-descent. Twice. The second rotation reduced your downward velocity by 9%. Your right shoulder absorbed the majority of the initial impact. That redistributed the force across your torso. Lucky shoulder. This is statistically improbable. So's my high school graduation." "Doesn't mean it didn't happen." The engineer's crest flickered again. Zayden tilted his head. "You guys ever fall off anything?" "No." "Not even once?" "We are careful." He folded his arms, wincing slightly as his ribs resisted. The engineer noticed. "You are experiencing thoracic discomfort." "I'm experiencing regret over that breakfast burrito." "You continue to make light of trauma." "I'm just trying to keep it from renting a room in my head." The technician with the sensor nodes stepped closer. "We would like to monitor your progress firsthand." "Would you consent to a mobility assessment? Like a treadmill? Like a climb?" Zayden stared at him. "You want me to climb something?" "Yes." "After I fell off a cliff?" "Yes." He thought about it, then shrugged. "Sure. Why not? I've done dumber things for less applause." Later that afternoon, they brought him to the station's grav gym. It was normally used by species with variable limb counts and grip orientations, so the structure had multiple climbing surfaces, some vertical, some inverted, some that shifted mid-climb to simulate instability. Zayden stood at the base of a moderately sloped wall. His right leg ached, and his left hand still tingled where nerves had been stitched back together. A trio of Kirellians watched from a viewing platform above, murmuring into their recorders. "You may begin when ready," one said. "No pressure," Zayden muttered, "except for gravity and peer judgment." He reached up, grabbed the first handhold, and pulled. His body protested immediately. Not in agony, he was past that, but with the dull, persistent fatigue of muscles still relearning their roles. He climbed slowly, testing each foothold before shifting weight. His right leg bore the load with a muted complaint, and his grip strength lagged on the left. Halfway up, he paused. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The wall curved slightly, and the next few grips required an awkward stretch. "Not the worst idea I've had," he muttered, "but definitely top 5. He adjusted his footing, lunged for the handhold, caught it, and pulled himself up. The wall shifted beneath him, a planned mechanical movement. The Kirellians leaned forward. Zayden pressed his cheek to the surface, breathing hard. You are demonstrating significant strain, one of the observers said. Yeah, he replied, because I fell off a cliff. He resumed climbing. Slower now, more focused. His shoulders burned and his leg trembled with each upward push. But he didn't stop. When he reached the top, there was no applause. Just the soft whir of fans and the blinking of data recorders. He sat down on the platform, legs dangling over the edge, and looked at the observers. Well, you are not dead, one said. I noticed. You should not be able to do this. Yet here I am. The next day, Dranex summoned him to the medical wing. You've been climbing, the physician said without preamble. Yeah. You were not cleared. I was supervised. You were not cleared. Zayden shrugged. I needed to move. Lying around makes me feel like I'm already in the ground. Dranex adjusted the lighting in the room, casting a pale lavender hue over the diagnostic panel. You have accelerated your recovery rate. Your muscle fiber regeneration is ahead of projection. The bone matrix shows increased density. Is that normal? For your species, it is unexpected. For ours, it is concerning. Why? Because you do not rest as expected. You adapt through exertion, not avoidance. Zayden leaned against the wall. That's how we're wired. Fight through it. Or fake it until it doesn't hurt anymore. Dranex studied him. You are not afraid of re-injury. I am. But I'm more afraid of never getting back up. Later that week, the station's central committee invited him to a closed session. Not a ceremony, not this time, but a roundtable of scientists, engineers, and cultural analysts. They wanted to understand him. Not just his biology, but the psychology behind it. Zayden entered the chamber with a noticeable limp and a strip of adhesive still across his temple. The chair provided for him was too low, so he adjusted it with a grunt. The questions began. In your culture, is pain considered weakness? No, pain's just the invoice. Weakness is not trying. Do you believe survival is a virtue? Only if you're doing something with it. Would you fall again under similar circumstances? I try not to. But if it meant saving someone, yeah. There was a pause. Why? Because that's what we do. Sometimes we don't even think about it. The analysts took notes. One of them, a soft-spoken historian with a long neck and shimmering scales, tilted her head. You are not exceptional among your species? Nope. I've seen people dig themselves out of worse. Then how do you define what is exceptional? Zayden smiled, tired but real. We don't. We just survive long enough to let someone else call it that. The session ended without ceremony. As he left, one of the younger analysts caught up with him in the corridor. You should not be standing. I get that a lot. Your species continues to challenge our understanding of endurance. Zayden paused, then leaned in slightly. You haven't even seen our coffee addiction yet. She stared, unblinking. He limped away, already planning the next climb. Zayden Hale's last appointment aboard the Kirellian orbital station was scheduled at mid-cycle, just after rest phase but before nutrient distribution. He arrived in the rehabilitation wing without limping, though the cane still hung from his belt like a decorative threat. The lead physiokinetics officer, a broad-shouldered being named Thresic with jointed arms and reflective dermal plating, greeted him with a curt nod. Thresic rarely spoke unless necessary, and when he did, it was with the weariness of someone paid to witness improbable recoveries. You have one final trial, Thresic said, gesturing toward the chamber behind him. Zayden stepped inside. The room was taller than it was wide, with a central column of retractable platforms that could rise and rotate. The Kirellians called it a mobility tower. Zayden called it the vertical regret machine. Any surprises this time? He asked, rolling out his shoulders. The platforms will shift without warning, Thresic replied. You may dismount at any time. I'll try not to do that the dramatic way. The chamber sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Lights dimmed. A low hum vibrated through the floor. The first platform rose from the base, aligning with his knees. Zayden stepped on without hesitation. The second platform jerked into place above him, slightly offset. He reached for it, testing his grip. His right leg held steady as he pulled himself upward, arms tensing against the movement. Midway through the fourth level, the column rotated. The next platform appeared behind him. "Cute," he muttered, twisting his torso to adjust. His hip clicked. "Still alive, thanks for asking." Above the observation window, two Kirellian analysts watched in silence. One tapped notes into a translucent pad. The other leaned forward slightly, antennae twitching. "His balance is self-correcting despite instability," the first murmured. "He registers no visible hesitation when reacting to rotation. He compensates for asymmetrical limb strain in real time." They fell quiet as he reached the sixth level. The platform beneath him dropped a few centimeters, then stabilized. Zayden grunted. "All right, Rude." He crouched, then jumped to the next ledge, not elegant, but effective. The impact jolted his knee. He hissed between his teeth, paused, and kept going. The analysts exchanged glances. He should be experiencing significant discomfort. He is. But he proceeds. Humans often do. By the ninth platform, sweat coated Zayden's back. His breathing had deepened. The tower shifted again, this time introducing lateral movement. The next rung of platforms began to glide in arcs. Zayden didn't hesitate. He timed the arc, reached, and caught the edge. His injured arm quivered under the weight, but he pulled himself up and straddled the platform like it might throw him off. The chamber buzzed as the final level extended. A flat surface, no tricks. He stepped onto it and raised both arms, panting. "Still here," he said aloud. The lights brightened. The doors opened. Thresik waited. "You have completed the sequence," he said. Zayden stepped out, rolling his shoulder. That was definitely built by someone who's never fallen off anything taller than a stool. Thresik angled his head. "You have exceeded all physical metrics set by our team. Should I get a trophy? Or just the ability to sit for the next hour?" "You will sit." They moved to a side room where a compact scanner began its final evaluation. Zayden lay still while the device swept across his body with a soft clicking sound. From the corner, Thresik observed without comment. Once the scan completed, he examined the results. Bone density above baseline. Good or alarming? Unusual. I'll take it. Muscle tissue has regenerated at an accelerated rate. Scar tissue formation is minimal. Neurological function remains optimal. Zayden propped himself up on one elbow. "So I'm either a medical miracle or a science fiction cliché. You are an anomaly. I'll add it to my resume." Thresik powered down the scanner. "You are cleared for departure." Zayden sat up fully. "That's it? No ceremonial orb this time. There will be no further orb exchanges. Probably for the best. Your survival is now officially documented. Your recovery has been peer-reviewed. There is no further doubt." Zayden stood, stretching carefully. "You know, I'm not trying to make a habit out of this." Thresik stepped forward, his voice lower. "You have demonstrated something we did not expect. Not simply endurance, but insistence. You refuse to remain broken." Zayden raised an eyebrow. "Is that your way of saying I'm stubborn?" "Yes." He chuckled dryly. "Well, at least we agree on something." They left the chamber together. The corridor outside was lined with a few curious Kirellian technicians, aides, and researchers who had tracked his progress from a cautious distance for weeks. One stepped forward, extending a small hexagonal object. "This is for you." Zayden took it. The surface shimmered with embedded micro-etchings. "A data crystal. It contains the full archive of your recovery," the aide explained. "We will use it to update our understanding of human biological tolerances." "Great." Immortalized in spreadsheets. "And to recalibrate future rescue protocols." Zayden slipped the crystal into his jacket. "Glad it wasn't for merchandising." The aide blinked. "Would you be open to that?" "No." He continued down the corridor, nodding to the few who saluted or offered strange gestures of respect. At the shuttle dock, his travel clearance was already approved. A transport officer handed him a small satchel containing basic provisions for the return trip. "You are cleared for Earth transit," she said. Can't say I'll miss the floors that move. You are the only visitor to complete recovery aboard this station after such trauma. Then I hope I set the bar high enough no one else has to try. The shuttle doors opened. He turned once before stepping through. Verney stood near the lift, his eye stalks lower than usual. You are leaving, Verney said. That's the idea. You refused to stop healing. I didn't know that was an option. Verney hesitated. You have altered our perception of your species. Hopefully not just as crash test dummies. There is now a term in our language Zayden Hale used to describe improbable survival. Zayden froze. Wait, I'm a verb? A noun. He laughed, then winced. That's gonna haunt me. Verney stepped forward. We expected to study a corpse. Instead, we observed something we cannot yet explain. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. Zayden offered a hand. Verney extended a tendril and they touched briefly. Then the human stepped onto the shuttle. The doors closed. A low hum filled the bay as the engines powered up. Back in the corridor, Thresic and Verney stood in silence as the shuttle detached and drifted into the starfield. He should have died, Thresic said quietly. Yes, Verney replied. But he didn't. No. They turned and walked away. Above them in the now empty mobility chamber, the final platform slowly retracted back into the column ready, though perhaps never needed again.